This is a continuation of our discussion about the importance of self-identity. We're going to be looking at a few dynamics related to biology, psychology, and self-construction. And we are following up on these four groups of people that are completely interrelated. You have the Moriscos, the Moranos, Africans, and Indigenous Americans. We're going to be looking at a self-construction assertion related to what would be considered the Moriscos. However, because of the conflation and intermixing of groups of people, it is going to have bearing on Moriscos, Moranos, Africans, American Indians, those that you would consider Western Europeans also. And so this is not confined to one particular external phenotype. We're going to revisit here this assertion that we've addressed before related to genealogy and history. And in this particular instance, there's also the issue of religion. And so with this assertion, there is the assertion of this identity of being related to the fallen angels, and that's in quotation marks. And then the belief in terms of this self-construction that this particular group of people have been sent to the planet to, in quotes, uplift fallen humanity. And so that phrase about uplifting fallen humanity is one that is frequently repeated. We're going to go on and look at some of the other assertions, and then we're going to jump into some other historical archival data. And here are some additional self-construction assertions, and you have here the assertion Moors are the pure light white, and then that Moors take over nations in order to make over nations. And the assertions go on to indicate that humanity is waiting for this particular ethnic group, and this particular ethnic group, in terms of this self-construction, is seeing itself as the salvation for humanity. And so that construct is repeated. Now, within the identity construction assertion, there is an offering of proof. And so the offering of proof is a reference to Spain and an indication that this particular group of people, quote, uplifted the people, unquote, in Spain. And then there's an indication that they took them to another level of consciousness. That's a quoted material. And then gave them schools and knowledge of the sciences of law. It is noteworthy that there are some dynamics that tie together these self-construction assertions with the Domesday Book, or the Book of Judgment, that is in England. And we are going to just quickly look at some of these things that link together this assertion in terms of spiritual self-construction, identity, and genealogy. We're going to quickly go through a few sources that address this idea of deifying in terms of self-construction and how it's tied to a number of surnames. So we're going to go through a number of dynamics very quickly, though, so that you can see what's going on here in terms of these assertions, and then look at some of the historical offerings in terms of this self-construction. You might want to pay close attention to this and do some of your own research on this. So inside of that text, there is a listing of these entities that are considered fallen deities. And that ties into this self-construction that is being offered. And one of the first names to consider, interestingly, is Amon. And Amon is a surname with English, Irish, and Scottish roots. And this name is included in the Domesday Book. Interestingly, they changed the spelling of the Domesday Book, which makes it difficult for some people to identify that this book is the Doomsday Book. And here you see a notation in this book that is supposed to be attributed to Solomon's workings and wisdom, and you see Amun identified as one of these spirits. And if you recall, we also addressed the issue of Barbados, which is down below. It's noteworthy that a number of these entities have nobility status. They have nobility names, nobility titles, and so you'll see Duke and Marquis and things like that. Here we have another surname, which is Amy or Ami. Now, when you look at this, it indicates that it's talking about friend or beloved. But as we go on, you will see that it has another indication here. And here you see this surname is tied to this entity identified in this book. And this one is particularly noteworthy for a number of reasons. This name is Andrus, and this name is related to the Picts. And so you also see that there's significant information about the relationship between Andrus and other clans. What's particularly noteworthy is that Andrus, a variation in terms of the spelling, is Andrew or Andrews or MacAndrew. And consistent with the self-construction that is offered, you see Andrus definitely has a Moor's head at the top, and you also see the St. Andrew's cross, and that cross, as we've discussed before, is noted on a number of flags. And here you see that Andrus is identified as another spirit with a title of Marquis. And this is another surname that's offered with English and Irish roots. The surname is Balaam or Balaam. And here you see additional information about this particular deity or entity. And so it does look like there is a pattern tying these entities, fallen entities, to names that are surnames coming out of the European area. It expands beyond that, but this is definitely showing this connection related to this self-construction. And here you see another name, Bathan or Batten, coming out of the word bat. This is another name. This has roots in England and Ireland. There's quite a bit of variation in terms of this surname, and you can see even the name Batman is there. Badman, Batman, Pateman, Padman. And here you see this deity slash surname associated with a noble title, which is Duke. You also see that this entity is related to a serpent and a pale colored horse. And here you have additional surnames rooted in this name Bottis or Botis, and this is coming out of Italy. And here you see this entity is associated again with a noble title of Earl, also identified as a president, and also related to this idea of a magician and several other things that you can look at. And then we have the surname Boone or Bon. And here you can see the variations in terms of the surname. You've got Bon and Bun and Bone. And again, you see another variation in terms of the name. You also see where it can be spelled B-I-M-E. And this entity slash family name is identified as a mighty duke and also appearing in the form of a dragon. And here you have another name coming out of the Norman Conquest, and this is Gomori with English roots. And here you see Gomori also has a nobility title, and that title is Duke, and also associated with a Duchess crown. And here we have the Osei or the Osi or the Os family surname. The surname is coming out of Holland, and notably it has a few spellings, including the spelling Oz. Now, even though these names appear to be rooted in Europe, these names are most prevalent in Nigeria. And this is the Oso version of the OC, and you can see also the highest prevalence is in Nigeria. This Oso, OC, also Voso identity or entity is related again to the noble title there, and also identified as related to a leopard. And here you see the surname Marax or Marax, which is rooted in England. This particular family name migrated to Maine, Virginia, the Carolinas, and the islands. This is another variation of the spelling, and this indicates that with this spelling, the majority of people with this name are in Papua New Guinea. And here you have the surname Aurea or Aureus. It is rooted in Italy, and also there are some variations that include Doria, Dioria, Diaria. And here you see this surname is also attributed to the entity that's indicated here, and also identified by a nobility title, which is Marquis. And here you have the surname Seer, which is rooted in England and Ireland, and also related to the Norman conquest. And there are a variety of spellings for this particular name. Now, this entity is identified as royalty versus nobility, identified as a prince. This entity is also associated with what is identified as the King of the East. Then you have the surname Sagan or Zagan coming out of Germany. Zagan, most prominent in Romania. And here you can see this surname Zagan is identified again by a royal title and also associated with a bull. And also this is a chimeric type of dynamic. And many of these entities appear to be in chimeric form, meaning they have forms that are made up of multiple entities. And here you have another entity identified as ruling over all of the spirits of Africa. This entity is identified with a noble title also, which is Marquis. The name sounds very similar to Chimera, which is Chimeras. And here we have another entity name. This entity is identified as a king in this particular situation. And what you have here is not just the naming of people groups, but you have this name associated as a geographic marker. And as you recall, people groups and individuals tend to name geographic spaces after themselves. And here you see this entity name attributed to India. And here we have another entity name, this one identified as royalty, going by the name Arobus. The surname Aroba is predominantly found in Kenya, and then the forename is found in Burkina Faso. And here are some additional assertions related to the names of entities. Now, associated with the names that you just saw related to chief deity status, you also have this name Agla. Now, Agla is coming out of Spain, and this name is reported as a local place name growing out of the Moorish invasion between the 8th and 12th centuries in terms of the conquering of Spain. And so therefore this is giving evidentiary support to the original self-construction assertion that we started off discussing. Now there are many variations in terms of that surname Agla or Agla, And you can see here that there was a migration into the Americas very early. So we have a migration of this name 1511. This is why it's very difficult to say with certainty that those groups identifying as American Indian groups are actually the indigenous people of the land. Also, when you have a self-construction that is based on going in, taking over different lands and different groups of people, renaming them, reformulating them, it's very difficult to then assert at the same time that the people that are there, that are found there today, are the original people of the land. That's not usually the way conquest works. It's possible that it worked that way, but it's also highly possible that it did not, based upon some DNA markers. And moving away from Europe for a second, you see that this Agla surname is most prevalent in Benin. So coming out of Spain into Benin, and then the next prevalence is Nigeria. Now you have a number of symbols associated with Solomon in terms of this whole narrative. And you can see here that this Agla, this letter combination, is related to symbolism attributed to Solomon, and also considered to be related to the chief deity status name. And if you'd like to read a little bit more about the genealogy of the individuals who occupied Central and Western Europe and then dispersed out, that are tied to this self-construction that we've been discussing, this is an article that you might want to consider. As we wrap up, you can see that this name Agla appears in a number of places in the East, from Algeria to Morocco to Turkey to Bangladesh, Benin, Pakistan, and Ethiopia. Now, this identity assertion is noteworthy. It crosses all sorts of preconceived ethnic lines. These surnames that are offered are surnames that are associated with a particular conquest. So that is also noteworthy. And these names, even though it has been obscured to a certain degree, these names, many of them are found in the Doomsday Book, which is the book of judgment. Now, it's not clear how this conflation came to be or how all of these people came to have surnames associated with these particular deities that are considered fallen deities. What is important, however, is that individuals and groups of individuals that are identifying in terms of religion, these individuals and these groups probably need to do a little bit more research to better understand this construction and this assertion, and how their names and their ethnic identities became intertwined with this dynamic. And you also have a number of things that suggest, in terms of scripture that people are using, that many of these entities, because of those titles seem to be associated with that nobility status dynamic. These titles appear to be more related to what would be considered Esau or Edom versus Jacob or Jacob. But it's important to also understand that these identities appear to be conflated. And so it is not completely clear who historically over in Europe asserting this status or these statuses. It's not really clear who is who. And so therefore it's not clear in America or Asia or Africa who these people are. So you have some people that are asserting identities, and it's very possible that in terms of genealogy, that many of these people are not exactly who they think they are, and that some other entities are actually identifying as different people that they may or may not be. And so it's very unclear, and there's a lot of religious conflation where the Moriscos and the Moranos appear to be the same people that then go on and take over the identities of other people wherever they colonize. So this is something important to note. It's important to note generally, and then it's important to note specifically with respect to what is going on with the current situation. Because this particular group of males associated with this construction, this identity assertion, there are some biological dynamics that are being asserted in the science literature related to this group. And those are some things that you might want to give some consideration to, because there are some very specific dynamics that are going on that appear to be related to these groups, related to this self-construction and this self-identity. There seems to be some biology associated with it. And so you might want to check that out. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.